This is Bob Mosher, and you're listening to the Performance Matters podcast series. In this episode, we will meet a wonderful 5 Moments of Need developer and consultant and strategist, Sue Reber, and she will take us through the power of something called targeted training. For years, we've pounded the digital coach for obvious reasons. It is the epicenter of what is a good 5 Moments of Need solution. But at the same time, we have sometimes come across as dismissing the classroom, which is far from the truth. Of course, 2 of the 5 moments are addressed best by formal instruction. So Sue will take us deeper into the whys, hows, and whens to defend and use what is called targeted training. We hope you enjoy, love to hear your feedback, and welcome, friends, to another episode. So friends, welcome back to Performance Matters podcast. Bob Mosher here. So excited you're joining us once again. Please continue to give us feedback on how these are doing. This is our 76th, I think, or 77th, so pretty spectacular. So we hope it's helpful. Please let us know. I am joined today once again by a dear friend and colleague of, my gosh, Sue, 30 years?
32 years, Bob.
Oh my gosh. 32 years. The world famous Sue Reber, who is just, as I say every time, just a remarkable designer, strategist, consultant in the 5 moments. She's been at it from day one and just does remarkable work. So couldn't have a better person on the podcast to talk about our topic today. So Sue, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
So here's the theme, friend. This is a wonderful compliment to our last podcast, which was called Calling My Baby Ugly. It was a story about the frustration many folks on this journey encounter when they run up against the old mindset of, well, training worked for me and don't you dare touch my class. And, and frankly, some of the obstacles we created in the years in which we made training. And, we led with training and all that kind of stuff. And so we're trying to make this fundamental shift. And so we talked holistically and principally about addressing that attitudinal narrative thing. Today, I want to go deeper, friend, because you're so brilliant at this. So the question is, how do I do that then? If I'm going to meet this request and I'm going to have something different, what does different look like? What do we call it? How do I explain it? All these things. So that's where we're going to go today. So Sue, let's start kind of holistically in segueing off of that baby ugly thing. And so are we saying that the classroom is minimized or dead, or how does the classroom, and is it still critical in a successful 5 moments of need workflow solution from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's actually more critical. And this methodology, it invigorates the classroom because instead of just having the instructor stand up there and be the sage on the stage and speak at people, and then have a couple of little exercises here or there, it's much more hands-on. And it's, as we talk about, targeted. It is targeted to the critical skills.
Love that. Yeah, as a trainer, my friend, back in the days that we started this journey together, there were certain classes and lessons I lied in bed the night before dreading, right? Because I knew either by the time I got to that lesson, they were overwhelmed and couldn't take anymore, or it was just a really hard thing for them to get. But darn it, we had to train it, right? Because it was in the outline. And
yes,
in training, we do everything, right?
That's right.
So let's go deeper on this word you used. We call it targeted training. Why do we call it that? Why is it the brand we've arrived at? And can you take us into sort of the 101 of the design of this thing?
Yeah. So if you think about traditionally the way that as ISDs we approach training, we started with the objectives. We started with an overview of we want this course, the business threw over the wall. We want a course on this. And we started out and we wrote objectives, and then we wrote the content to meet the objectives, and we had to cover everything. And it's a whole lot of this is what you need to know and not so much about what you need to do. We call it targeted training because we are really targeting the skills that are critical, that have a critical impact of failure for the organization. And we are leaving the other pieces for people, the pieces that are not so critical that they can learn on their own in the flow of work. We're leaving those to be presented as part of the digital coach. And so they have that support on the job, and they don't have to go back afterwards and look at their training materials or read their notes or ask people questions, because it's all right there in the digital coach. So they, instead of spending the time trying to remember a bunch of stuff that the instructor is telling them, they are spending that time in training actually working on the skills that are critical to them to be able to do their job.
So let's go deeper on two things, Sue, in there, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Could you use some really important words that I think are misunderstood?
Mm-hmm.
SMEs juxtapose important and critical.
Yep.
Right. And darn it, when I used to sit in front of them doing a needs analysis or task analysis in the old days, every stinking thing was important. And I get it. Everything is important. If you guys sit in front of leaders for a leadership course or a leadership outline or objective or outcome is a better word, right? Everything about leading is important. To do well. It's important to do everything well. What's this critical thing you keep referencing? Is it the same as important? How do we really get finite about what we mean by critical?
Yeah. So no, it is not the same as importance because, as you mentioned, everything is important or we wouldn't be actually needing to do it. Why would you do things that are not important on the job?
Love that.
So, yeah. What we mean by the critical impact of failure is the things that are critical are those things that if you don't do them correctly, or if you mess something up with them, that they are going to cause serious repercussions for you, your team, the business. And so that's what we look at. If I don't do this correctly, how bad is it going to be? And we want to target those things in the training because obviously those are the things that you need to practice in a safe environment. And the classroom is the best place to do that, where you have an instructor right there to provide feedback instantly.
Absolutely, absolutely. What the instructor can do best. Con always talks about the fact that, unfortunately, the way we've piled on the classroom for so long, we've not let it do what it does best. Mm-hmm. We've not let the trainer do what trainers do best. So my second question in this is, take me a little bit deeper into the elements then of the course. If you're an ID, what kind of things are you designing? Is it lecture based all the time? Is it, because darn it, when I had 1,000 PowerPoints to cover, it was kind of lecture based to get through everything. Maybe once in a while I ask questions and blah, 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 but darn it, the content won the day because there was just so much. So tell me about the actual design components of this model.
Yeah, so this is where I would say the targeted training invigorates the classroom because it is not lecture-based. It's not the instructor standing in the front of the room reading you or all this stuff on the slide. Instead, the instructor is introducing something using the digital coach as part of the training, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a few minutes. And then the people in the class are actually doing the work hands-on, whatever it is that they need to do, rather than sitting through lecture-based learning and just answering knowledge checks. It's hands-on. What are the things that you need to practice?
We talk about something called ramp up and down, Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A really important design principle in this class that actually, again, shines here. It's allowed here. In fact, it's really spectacular in the kind of learning that occurs. Can you take us through what that model is about? What does ramp up and ramp down mean?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the training, the trainer obviously plays an extremely important role in guiding the students. But as you go through the course, at the beginning of the training, you are also introducing the digital coach and the resources that people will have available to them when they go back to work. And so throughout the training day, the instructor is going to be teaching the students to fish. How's that?
I love that.
Instead of giving them the fish, they're going to be teaching them, okay, where would you look for this? And it's more of almost like an apprenticeship model, Bob, where I'm going to start out as the instructor and I'm going to be demoing and guiding you. And I'm going to also show you where you can find the support that you need. And by the end of the training, by the time you walk out the door, then you know what resources you have available. You haven't had to try to remember everything like in the old days with the training manual and go back to your desk and be leafing through a 300-page training manual to try to find something when you get to it in the real world. So that's Brilliant. How I see it as different.
And that's intentional, right? It's not just
Mhm.
happenstance. You
Yep.
design this handoff through guided and unguided practices. I mean, really, and even the old days of instructor guides, right? We actually guide the instructor and say, look, don't
Yeah.
talk here. This activity is designed more to be a little less guiding, a little more failure. Done this survey zillions of times that students say they learn best through trial and error and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
This model allows that.
And I think it's more rewarding for the trainer too,
Why is that?
because you're really seeing the progression instead of it just being you. I said it before, I'll say it again, the sage on the stage performing all day long. You're actually getting in and digging in with the students. And I feel like that is much more rewarding at the end of the day. And it's also less exhausting.
Yeah, I remember teaching this model long ago, friend, with you, and fighting two things. One was shutting up. Because because every ounce of my being remembered the old teach everything class, and so it was hard not to.
Yeah.
Right. And I think intuitively we're the kind of people that don't want folks to fail. We don't want them to struggle, right? But secondly, to your point, the thing that was amazing was I knew at the end of the day how my students did. The old days of 26 faces in front of me, whoever raised their hand the most, they kind of won the day, right? Most everyone else nodded. But in this model, darn it, at the end, you go, wow, Mary still struggles a bit. Boy, Bill is so self-reliant by 4:00. I mean, they were just cranking in the digital coach. It's a very different thing. So let's go deeper into this digital coach thing then. We promised to talk a bit more about that. We've talked about it in other podcasts, but really important to bring into the context of this. What is it? And why is it such a critical part then of this model?
Yeah. So the digital coach is your support on the job to meet all 5 moments of need. So we talk about new and more being mostly in the classroom, but that content is all in the digital coach. So it's also available when you are at work. And really when you need the support is at the moment of apply or the moment of solve or the moment of change. And that is something that the traditional classroom could not do. The digital coach, that's how we approach it. We've got all of everything that you do on the job, the tasks, the steps, the supporting knowledge, the resources, they're all associated with that task. And the performer can get to them on the job when they need it.
It's funny because back to your teach to fish thing, right? I mean, new and more is in there, right?
Yep.
In many ways, right? Because we're going to skip stuff. By the definition of critical impact of failure, there are things we're going to say. You got the guardrails, you've got the life jacket on. You're not going to kill yourself or others. And I think it was hard for me, Sue, to let go of the fact that life is the best teacher.
Yes.
Right? It really is. And if that's my goal, if that's my outcome as an instructor, I have to be there for the critical stuff. That's just being responsible. But also being responsible is, and this was a mental shift for me, letting them fail, knowing they would when they went back, even to things I hadn't maybe taught. But my goal was to equip them.
Yes.
And that's where the digital coach for me as a facilitator came in.
Yep.
So trainers, we're hitting at them. A lot of organizations use SMEs. Frankly, right? I mean, a lot of organizations, especially nowadays, my gosh, with the world as it is and the economy and other things, the days of a instructional faculty, right? I mean, we had how many at LO, right? A lot of operations. Oh my gosh, we had 19 classrooms. That's at least 19 trainers.
Yeah.
I mean, Bank of America, I think, had like 100 or some crazy amount, back when we first met them. Those days are gone. So a lot of organizations will use SMEs as their trainers. We talked to one the other day that they said we put people right on the floor. They coach / train, another version of training, right? No instructional background at all. So how does this help them? What are the elements of effective training in this model?
So I think it helps them because they are not as subject matter experts. They know everything. And a lot of times, subject matter experts are kind of like unconsciously competent. And so they might skip stuff. that
Mm.
is actually really critical. And so I think that having the digital coach and having the targeted training can really help them to make sure that they don't skip things for that new person. And
Mm.
also, like you said, the guardrails, I think it gives them the guardrails to not have to go off and on everything. It allows them to be more focused and to do really what they do the best, which is they are the expert.
Yes.
So I actually think it's brilliant to have a subject matter expert be the trainer in this instance, because when people encounter things that don't work or they don't understand something, that subject matter expert can really help them figure out
I love
where
that.
they're going wrong.
We had a trainer once tell us in this model, Sue, that when the burden was on him to be a trainer, all of his SME stuff went out the window because he was so terrified and so glued to the script.
Yep.
Right. In this model, he brought a rich years of experience.
Yeah.
And storytelling, examples, watch out for this. That stuff's safe here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And there's time for it.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, especially our IDs who are listening, their minds churning, and understandably, because they've not made this journey, many of them yet, they're using what they know now, how they design now, the time it takes to design now, how much has to go into their design now. They're hearing us say this, but they don't know it yet, really, right?
Yeah.
They haven't really done it. So a common objection we get, Sue, or obstacle is, oh my gosh, I can't help but go, I am overwhelmed now. It takes me forever now to design my training. This digital coach thing you're talking about, how am I going to have time to do this? What's your advice to them? Or what am I maybe not understanding right? Or because I agree, if it triples the time, no.
Yeah.
So speak to that a bit, would you?
Yeah. So I think for me, the biggest thing, and I think it's the biggest thing that I see instructional designers struggling with, is changing their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You have in front of you the results of your rapid workflow analysis, and you have the critical impact of failure. You only need to focus on the things that are high critical impact of failure, and it actually kind of frees you up to be more creative about what it is that you're designing. Instead of trying to cover everything, you're really able to spend time thinking about what are the critical things and what is the best way for people to practice those in a safe environment.
So help me with this one. Again, what I'm also probably thinking is the first thing I'm going to build is my class.
Nope.
Because that's what I always did.
Yeah.
And of course, because I did, everything went in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What's the order of operation here, Sue?
The order of operation is create the digital coach, because that covers everything. And then you build your targeted training to incorporate the digital coach in the classroom so that people leave class knowing what's in there and how to use it.
That's such a big aha for me, because I think it was easier for me to let go of everything once I saw the digital coach first. Right. And those listening haven't really seen that yet. So,
right.
But when you build that digital coach first and you understand the robustness of it, the rigor of it, what elegant design of it, you go, sure, well, I'm not going to teach margins. I mean, they can look it up. and it's not going to kill them. I mean, it really is a remarkable thing. So let's put a bow around this. If I'm out there listening, you've been on this journey for 30 years, remarkably. I've watched you mature through the whole thing and help us evolve the model in just remarkable ways. What advice do you give to folks on this journey? IDs, let's start with IDs. And if you don't mind, let's broaden that to like an L&D leader or the team. So let's start with those in the trenches. What advice do you give them to begin embracing this?
Have an open mind. I mean, don't just, like, a lot of times what I see is closed body language and a closed mind. Have an open mind. This really does work, and it makes a lot of sense. And if you will open your mind and walk through it once, you'll see that, yes, it really does work.
And there's a methodology. There's a rigor.
Yep.
Because that's what we do, right? IDs, we fall back on a design.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
How about L&D leaders? those out there that are leading the charge. And what's interesting about them is they get sandwiched both ways, right? They got to lead the charge. They got to lead the charge up or out, probably a better word.
Yeah.
Because like our friend with the "Don't Call My Baby Ugly" thing, that poor leader was fighting the enterprise.
Yeah.
They also have to lead a team.
Yeah.
Right. So what's your advice to them in helping this work?
Start small, prove that it works, and then you can start to tell that story and show, yes, this really does work, and the business will listen because really what they want is results.
Love that. Frank Whidd once said, I stopped doing the PowerPoints, and when they asked me for e-learning, I said, sure, and then I gave them this. And they were like, wait, this is this is what e-learning looks like now. I mean, it was, but to your point, he realized that the proof literally is in the pudding, right? And what we hear over and over again is when learners see this, they want so much more.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Spectacular. As always, Sue, you're wonderful. Thanks for your thought leadership, your rigor, your passion around this whole thing. And if anybody wants more, they can, of course, reach you at sue@applysynergies.com. If they want to follow up, answer any questions, by all means, post in the comments when it comes to the podcast, and we'll continue down the journey. Thanks, Sue, so much.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, that's it for this episode of the 5 Moments of Need Performance Matters series. We look forward to future conversations around how to best put the 5 moments of need into practice. We welcome your feedback and can be reached on Twitter using my Twitter handle at BMOSH, as well as our 5 Moments of Need website, which is www.5momentsofneed.com. We hope you're finding these helpful and will subscribe to future episodes. Have a great day, friends.